Welcome to Men Let Me Reason, the podcast, a space dedicated to fostering open and honest conversations about the complex realities of fatherhood and ultimately manhood in today's world. We will be exploring the unspoken issues that we men face, shedding light on what society expects of us, our emotions, and our social interactions at all levels, especially within the family. This podcast isn't just about acknowledging issues, it's about us men being accountable, transparent, and finding solutions while building strong support systems. So, men, let me reason. Welcome to another episode of Men Let Me Reason. This is the space where we men discuss the unspoken realities of manhood. Today, we put the microscope on a topic: navigating co-parenting after separation. I am Fabian Sargent. I'm your host, and with me to discuss this topic is Cornelius Bartlett and Akil, Daley. Gentlemen, welcome.
Good evening, thank you.
Yeah. Cornelius, I'm going to start with you. What does fatherhood mean to you?
Well, if I were to put it in one word, I would say fatherhood means the world to me.
Yeah.
Everybody know me as a businessman, but to be honest with you, my number one role and the thing I'm proudest of, people brag about the car, their house, I brag about my family, my children, my grandchildren, yes. Yeah. And fatherhood, I would say, just to put it in a nutshell, is going to be your most significant role, but it is a role and it is something that is underestimated, not only by people that are not men, but by men.
Yeah. Your
children, if you're doing it right, should literally see you like God. In other words, you as a father should be a reflection of God within your family.
Yeah.
Whether you believe in God or not, because some people say they don't believe in God, but everybody worships something.
Yeah.
Everybody worships something. So children are going to connect, or we talk about the attachment theory. Children attach to their parents, but the attachment they have to fathers is going to be a little different from how they attach to mothers. They see fathers as being like God, being protectors, being providers, being guiders, being a foundation, being the kind of, we call the root and the stability. And I believe that the reason we are seeing a lot of women who are suffering trauma in adulthood, men who are suffering trauma in adulthood, men who are in prison, it comes down to this thing called fatherlessness, or daddy issues.
Yeah. So, Akil.
Yes, please.
What does fatherhood mean to you?
Fatherhood means everything to me, just like Cornelius would have said. I often say my number one job is being a father. Everything else is secondary. That's the most important job for me. And that's being a protector, being a guider, a teacher, and love. To me, love is the most important ingredient for a father to pass on to his kids. Teach them what love embodies. Teach them what the Bible says love means. Because society projects love as just a feeling, but love is much more than a feeling. So being a father is important, and it doesn't end. That's the thing about fatherhood. It's present and continuous.
Yeah, and I love it. It means so much to me, I think it's the best thing that have ever happened to me.
I could say the same.
As a person. And I really would like men that are watching this podcast to really feel that way about being a father.
Yeah.
It's amazing. But, as we get into the meat of the matter of separation and co-parenting, can there be a positive relationship? How do we maintain a positive relationship, after a separation?
But first of all, because separation has different levels. First you have a separation, then you have a divorce. Yeah. In my case, I'm no divorce. And I can tell you that one, it's complicated, and two, it costs for a lot of work. So you have to understand, one, it is complicated, and two, you have to make up your mind that you are going to put in a lot of work. When I would say that one of the most heartbreaking experiences I've ever had in life is to see my children being removed from my home to go to live with my ex-wife. All right? And even though a lot of things about leading up to divorce and divorce I did not agree with, let me just say this, and I want to say this slowly. One of the things that is very important for us as men to do is to accept. And when I say accept, understand this, to accept is not to agree.
Correct.
Yeah.
I want to draw a line in the center and make a distinction. To accept is not to agree. To accept is to make peace with that you are not God and you cannot control the things that happen around you.
Correct.
But what you can control by accepting is that you can navigate and you can choose to be your best self in the worst situation. And that's what I did. In fact, when I was going through, I remember when the family was breaking down, the marriage was breaking down, I remember not just getting one counselor, I had 2 counselors. And I know a lot of men listening now are gonna, if they're going through issues, they may think that they don't need a counselor. That's why you see suicide attempts, and you see they want to go and beat up this body, they want to do this, and they end up on the wrong side of the law. And they also end up setting a bad example for their children.
That is the part.
We're talking fatherhood. So when you set a bad example for your children, what you're doing is you're putting more nails in the casket of parenting when you become separated. So the acceptance I'm talking about is to accept that you cannot change the decision of your ex-wife or your wife that you're separated from. A lot of things you may not agree with, but you have to learn to manage, to navigate. And at the central, penultimate heart of everything you do, you need to keep your children in mind. I can tell you.
You see that? I think that's where a lot of people fall down, because there's be a lot of hurt and a lot of pain.
Yeah.
And there's this type of get back type mentality. And in that whole process, the children are the ones being trampled on. They're the ones who will be hurt, you know. Akil, what's your thoughts about maintaining a positive relationship, you know, I guess in our whole space of co-parenting?
Yes, unlike Cornelius, my situation was a bit different. We aren't divorced yet, but we are separated. This is about 2.5 years now. And the hard part for me was that, unlike you, I got primary custody of the children. My children's mother, my wife, she has visitation. And it was even more challenging for me because I don't know if you have noticed, but I am disabled. I had a nerve injury from a motorcycle accident. I tore my brachial plexus. And the brachial plexus houses all the nerves running to your hand. So it's very painful. I often say that I feel pain every second of every day for the last 16 years. It doesn't stop. Nerve pain is not fear because it doesn't go away, it doesn't stop. So all of that was very hard for me to navigate. And when she left, the children were 2 years old and 4 years old. So imagine changing a stoolie pamper with one hand. That's the most difficult thing to do. Imagine making breakfast for children every morning, bathing them, getting them ready with one hand. So I had to navigate that. And you use the word feelings. Yes, my feelings were hurt. Because for me, family was my priority. Family was my everything. I would have never left my wife. I would have never divorced, because that would break up my family. And family is so important to me. But you use a word called acceptance. I had to accept that she didn't want to be with me anymore. So I had to accept that. And it hurt my feelings. But I try not to be guided by my feelings, because as you know, feelings change. And feelings tend to change rapidly. So I try not to be guided by how I feel. And I thank the Lord a lot for the foundation that I had. I had a grandmother that made the family go to church. I had a mother that taught me the Bible and taught me the will of God and how to be a godly man. So, and she was always in my ear. My mother was the first person I would turn to when my feelings weren't the best. When I felt down, I would call mommy, and mom would lift me up with some biblical knowledge, you know, how the Lord tell you to handle this situation. And a lot of the times it was against how I felt. Oh, you want to curse she? I think she's the worst body in the world for putting left me in this position. But that is not the position that the Lord wants you to take, because your children are looking on. So the children have to see you speaking to her with love. You get me?
But you see that? That's so hard for some people to do.
It's very hard because you don't feel like doing it. But you have to overcome what you feel and do what you know is best for your children who are watching.
There's some people listening to us now who probably saying, you know, it's easy for him to say that. And because I've been on both sides of the fence, obviously, as having gone through it, right? But what I'll tell you is, you see perspective? See perspective? Perspective is so significant. That is why I keep advocating about counseling and therapy. And even some of the time people spend on the internet watching nonsense, go and look at some inspiration and some psychology and some human behavior and stuff like that. But that's why I spend a lot of my time doing over the last, 6-7 years. And I'll tell you, right, that when you start to get perspective, because the problem with a lot of us, and again, I'm gonna call it out now, right? The problem with a lot of us is that we get into a pity party. How this can happen to me, and I this and I that. We're almost like narcissistic, right? As opposed to coming out, and this may sound strange. You see that same woman that don't want to be with you sometimes? If you can get over yourself and come outside yourself and look and see what she is going through. I know this might sound foreign what I'm saying, but when whoever is listening to this and they stop to think about it, when you look at the traumas and the woman that you marry, you don't know the kind of traumas that she had. We're talking as men, right? Yeah. If you could understand some of the traumas and how they are affecting her at the point when she made that decision, right? To look at your case, for example, right? I can tell you that a normal, healthy female, a normal, healthy mother is not going to do that. And one of the things that I want to ask men for, right? And in spite of how much licks we're getting in these relationships that go sour, is I'm asking for compassion for the mothers out there who are displaying the symptoms, and their symptoms, the symptoms of trauma. When you start to see the spouse that leaving you, or the spouse that telling lies on you to everybody, and you understand what is driving her to do that, you're going to start to think different, and you're going to start to have compassion. Now, my wife, for example, my ex-wife would have chosen to have a divorce, right? We're not going to get involved in details of why and all that, right? But she chose to have a divorce, right? And I never, like you, and I mean, you sound like me. When I got married, I told myself that there's nothing that this woman could do bad enough to make me divorce her. That's what I told myself. But I was having a conversation with me. She obviously didn't feel the same way. But the point of the matter is that when I was faced with a divorce, it was very devastating for me. As I said, I got two counselors. But when I got past myself and me and what this is doing to me and what he wanted and what he had planned, and I started thinking about her. I remember shedding tears for her in compassion for what she might have been going through in dealing with the family and marriage and that kind of thing.
It's interesting, Cornelius, you would say that, because I had to, well, my mom, you would hear me refer to her a lot because I turn to her a lot for spiritual guidance.
Yeah, that support is critical.
I thank the Lord that I have a mother that I can turn to for spiritual guidance. And she also is a counselor, a certified counselor, so that helps as well.
Excellent.
But she helped me to look at my wife's situation differently. And I thank the Lord for that, because without going into details, I was focused a lot on me and how I felt. And I didn't take the time to look at how our environment would have affected her. Imagine she's 8 years younger than me. We had 3 children at the time. 2 were very young, and that was during COVID. So you have a lot on your hands. And I was not thinking of her, because here I am with a nerve injury, feeling pain all the time. So I am focused on my battle. And I am just expecting her to perform the roles a wife and a mother should perform, and not complain. But without understanding that
still gotta do your situation.
Correct, and all of that weight is compounded on a young woman's shoulder, who thinks that, you know what, I don't have to stay here and put up with this. I can go somewhere else and have it easier, have it better. So it was a shock for me that she chose to leave, but as you said, I had to accept that that was the choice she made and focus on what is best now for the children.
Yeah, and I gotta commend you for that, because oftentimes we go through issues and we don't ever think of the other party.
That's right.
We don't ever think of how they're seeing it from through their lens, or the traumas or the issues that they would have in their life. It's always about Me, myself, and I, you know. And I know there got a lot of men that may be watching this that ain't got this sort of spiritual strife or even got the support like you. How do we get these men to prioritize the needs of their children? Even through this whole separation process. Because a lot of men don't know how to do it.
I think your perspective determines your reality. And that's a life quote for me. Your perspective determines your reality. How you look at a situation will always determine how that situation turns out for you. How I look at my injury, I could have said, you know what, I enough pain in my hand, I can't do this, I can't do that, but that was never my perspective. My perspective is, I can't do everything because I got a Lord that will help me, but I will do it differently. It might take me a little longer, I might do it differently. So your perspective determines your reality. So a lot of the time, how the man looks at the situation will determine how he acts. So if you look through the lens of, I am focusing on what is best for my children, you will do what it takes, what's best for them.
Yeah.
And I truly believe that. Yeah. But a lot of the times we are focused on how we feel and how much it hurt, and not necessarily focused on what's best for the children. And it's a hard pill to swallow. Listen to me. I love my wife. I still love my wife. Seeing my wife bring back the children after she has them from visitation, watching her walk down that gap, it still hurts. This 2.5 years after, it still hurts me. But that's the decision that she made. I have to accept that and do what's best for my children. And that is where my mind is fixed. And as long as my mind is fixed there, as long as that is my perspective, my actions will follow. And I truly believe that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we talk a bit about leadership. So Cornelius, as a father, and it's sure that as a real leader, you would got plans, a vision for your children's life.
Yeah.
You know, how do you see separation as impacting our vision for them?
Well, first of all, let's separate it out a bit.
Yeah.
Children become traumatized. I mean, there's no amount of soft feather blanket you could lay down that will not. I can tell you that my 2 children, I was more hurt for them than I was for me.
Okay.
Yeah. I saw, even to this day, the effects of it is still being seen. From the outside you can't tell, but when you know your children, like I know my children, I'm a diaper changing, bottle feeding, you know, I'm very connected to my children.
Yeah.
Almost like how a woman is connected to their children, right? But I can tell you that on my part, I am extremely passionate about my relationship with my children. And I can tell you that even though the marital part of it ended, for me, the father part of it would never end.
Correct.
So in other words, I plan to, as long as I have life, stay connected to my children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren. So you understand the seriousness with how we view this. So all of the things that I did before, I multiply it by 10, because one of the things about the difference between living in a house and not living in a house is that when you live in a house, it's easier to do things together as a family with your children. When they're no longer in your home, you have to be intentional and thoughtful. So for example, yesterday, for example, I would have, my daughter is now at college, and I would have told my daughter like the day before that we go on lunch tomorrow. Normally if you live in a house, I probably wait till weekend. Yeah? Or wait till month end. But very often I do things like that. I think a lot more about things like that, because now that you are not in the same space, you have to put in more effort to make sure that they always feel you. They always feel your presence. But when we were living together, I was the one, for example, the children would say, Daddy, I'm ready to go to bed, come in prayer, because I was the one who would, you know, because I believe that men should lead in that regard. I know a lot of men like to leave women to pray with their children. As a spiritual man, I believe that that is my role. Right. I remember when my son was first born, for example, I didn't wait for anybody to dedicate my son. At about a week old, I went outside and I do like what they did in the old African culture. I dedicated my son to the Lord. At about a week or about 2 weeks old. So what I would say simply is that because the marital relationship ends, the fathering relationship does not have to end. It should not end. In fact, it should then go on steroids. It should multiply about 10 times. So it means that you need to put in 10 times more effort. You need to make sure and put aside being business focused all the time, because I'm a businessman, so you know that business is always something that is trying to consume you. You should put aside some time instead of liming with the boys constantly all the time. Spend some of that time with your children.
For me, it's the opposite. It's interesting hearing your perspective on it, Cornelius, because as I said, I have primary custody of my children, so I want break. To tell you the truth. I want break.
But you know, this type of situation is usually coming from women.
Correct.
Because of the degree of fatherlessness we got, and how men to see mother, the children supposed to be mother and to be home, and you know, how you score?
I will say, and I will be honest, it is the most difficult but enjoyable task that I have ever had. But it's difficult.
Yeah.
Let me underline that and put it in red. It's difficult, and I often feel like giving up. Let me say that again, because I don't want y'all to think that I'm perfect, not because of my faith that I don't have struggles. I often feel like giving up. OFTEN, often. But I will never give up. Also notice that I said that I will never give up. So when I have that feeling, remember I tell you feelings often change, always change. When I have that feeling, I usually go to change my perspective. I will listen to Tony Evans if my mommy ain't available, because when I listen to him and I get that downloaded in my spirit, I ain't thinking how I was thinking anymore. My perspective has changed. Or when I talk to my mother and my mother download what the Lord say, how you should deal with this situation, because the Bible is a guide. It gives you a guide that you can face any situation in life. The Bible shows you how to handle it. And my mother often is the one who navigates me through these pitfalls of life. And I'm thankful for that. But it is difficult, baby. Imagine imagine washing up dishes with one hand. A dish is moving in the sink. I had to learn to do these things. I remember I used to have to wake up my boys at 5 o'clock in the morning so they wouldn't get school late, because it might take someone with two hands an hour and a half to make breakfast and get children ready. But imagine somebody that doing it with one hand, and not only doing it with one hand, doing it with nerve pain, and not only doing it with nerve pain, I was also diagnosed 5 years ago with hip dysplasia. So what that means is that my hips often slip out of place. So that's very uncomfortable walking. So, but I go walk. From the time I wake up, I got to be mobile. I have to do things for my children. So I often have to be in tune with my Heavenly Father to take how I feel to Him and ask Him to give me the strength to do what I have to do daily for my children. So it's a struggle, Fabian.
I commend you. You know what I mean? I really commend you. And keep that faith going.
I will never give up. I will never give up.
Because you're raising young men of the future.
And they are doing so well, you know.
Congratulations, brother.
Yeah.
How do you communicate the issues, though? You know, you talk co-parenting. You separate or you break up.
I like this guy.
Yeah, in a household, the children. I guess we're talking about, you know, being in a house with children, and then separation happens. How do you communicate the whole situation, or communicate that, yes, daddy ain't going away?
Well, first of all, the communication should probably be more practical than verbal, because, as they say, talk cheap. So let me tell you in my case, I made it a priority to make sure that I did those school runs, for example. So once you get into schedules now where you're picking up the children on evenings, you commuting for like 20 minutes, maybe half hour, depending on traffic, with your child or children. That gives you a chance to talk, to connect. Things like making sure and planning outings. So you have to be real intentional now. So you're going to the beach, you're going to dinners, you're going and playing games together.
But while you're doing this, really communication, the talk, because you're doing all of these things, that's okay. But how do you tell them verbally? Well, you say, well, show them. But that could be interpreted for many other things. You know, you feel as if you're camouflaging the issues or whatever. How do you talk to them? I mean, words. Do you do that, or have you done that? Because I think we must be, again, you hear this word all the time, intentional. You gotta be direct, And we have to make sure that the message is clearly communicated. So doing all these things is good. But I think we need to be a little more direct. So have you had that conversation, and what does that conversation look like? If so, outside of all the niceties that you would do for them.
Or for example, you mean like reaffirming?
They're talking, talking.
Yeah.
They let them know that,
Well, you know, I'm a talker.
Yeah.
So I'm not one of the fathers who have a difficulty with communicating.
Yeah.
So for example, I try to make sure in my conversations, more often than not, with, I love you.
Yeah.
So that my children actually know, well, Daddy loves you. Sometimes I have hard conversations, for example, where you say, but you know, I know that sometimes you may not agree with some of the things that I'm imposing on you, but just understand that I'm doing it for your best interest. I remember having a conversation with my son, for example, when he was about 11. And I said, but you know that my role is not to agree with you. He said, he had a mind, so he had a mind. I said, but you thought that my role as a father was to agree with you all the time? My role as a father is to do the best for you, by you, whether you like it or not. And you know what I do it out of? I do it from a place of love.
Yeah.
When you get older, you will get to realize what being a father is about. And you will thank me for these occasions.
I want to take a jab at that question because I got a totally different answer. Because unlike you, my children are very young. So they are 4 and 6. And I remember, this happened very recently, so this whole scenario is still playing out in my household. I remember very recently was bathing my 6-year-old, and he's very smart. He's, I would say, super smart. Photographic memory, I marvel at how his mind works. But anyway, I love him. But anyway, I was bathing him and just out the blue, Daddy, why mommy don't live with us anymore? Oh Lord. That was the first thing I said to myself and to the God. Oh Lord, we at this. I thought I would get here when he's 8. You get me? But he's smart, so he gets it here already. And I was like, Lord, how to answer this question? I wasn't prepared for it.
You haven't seen anything yet.
And I said, I said, Sage, I don't really know why mommy doesn't want to live here anymore. You will have to ask mommy that. But what I can tell you is that daddy will always be here for you. You don't ever have to worry about daddy leaving you. Daddy will always be here to live with you, and you will always live with daddy. But then Sage went and asked mommy. When Sage, the next time Sage was on visitation with mommy. And to tell you all the truth, mommy answer upset me. It really upset me. Without disclosing what she said, mommy painted me in a negative light to my child. And when Sage came home, the first thing he tell me when he walked through the door, Daddy, what you do to mommy? And I was like, Sage, that is not true. I did not do such and such to mommy. Let me let you know that that is not true. And then I called her. And I wanted to blister. You know, in Beijing, it's a blister, blind she in class. But I say, you know what, that's the approach to me here. Right
because
now.
that was going to be the next question. How do we deal with this conflict?
I said to her, I want to say something to you, and I want to be very clear. Never speak negative about me to my children. I said it just like I said it there. Very firm, but very soft. Never speak negative about me to my children. I will never do it to them about you. I never speak negative about you, and I will appreciate it if you never speak negative to my children about me. She said, okay, and that was the end of the conversation. I hang up the phone, and so far I have not had to deal with that again. So to answer the question, that is how I dealt with the situation. But as I said, my children are young, so it's a bit different for me.
Yeah, well, I'm going to get that now, but when they get older, they're going to start asking
I know that, and hopefully I'll be more prepared.
They have to answer some sex questions, things about sex and all that when they get in secondary school.
Yeah.
But to talk about conflict, and that's a good topic, right?
Yeah.
You're lucky in that you did not get the kickback that other men would get. But there's no way that you can control.
It's very true.
There's no way you can control what a woman tells your children about you. All right? So one of the things that you have to do is just understand that you have to accept that as well. That you may get a lot of lies and so on told on you. You can do nothing about it except one thing. Present your best self to these children every moment of every day, of every week, of every month, of every year. And eventually, whatever discovery they need to make, they will do it on their own. The problem with us is that we like fast food. We want immediate gratification. They got something like on me now. And sometimes as a man, we may go straight to what we're talking men today and fathers. Sometimes you have to wait 5-10 years in suffering before you meet your promised land, before you get delivered, before the children get to realize that you're not as bad as your ex.
But you see, I know, I understand, and I just try to bring a little different side to it. I understand this whole thing of telling lies. But is it lies sometimes, or sometimes it's just how they see things? Because, you know, like, all of we can look at the same car or the same situation. Fabian, and we could be arguing two totally different points.
Right, there are two dimensions. What you're saying is a possibility, but let's cut to the chase. Yeah. Sometimes there are some women who blatantly tell lies.
It is true.
For example, I know, a man right now who is going through some stuff, good friend of mine, where and he was shocked because his daughter is now 30-something years old. He is married to somebody else and lives in a different country. And his daughter is telling him, Mommy told me that you told me you were vexed because she didn't get an abortion. Now, there's no perspective on that. That is either true or it's not true. You get what I'm saying? So I don't want us to cutify. I don't want us to over-exaggerate, but I don't want us to cutify either, Fabian, right? There are a lot of lies flying around when divorce and separation happens.
That's the pain and the hurt.
Yeah, yeah, it might be the pain and the hurt, but the fact of the matter that the pain and the hurt is the motive, but the fact of the matter is a lie. Okay. Or they're lies. So let's be honest, and let's not brush aside the fact that there are men out there who are listening and would think that we don't believe that lies are being told. And we know that lies are being told in some cases. Not always, but in some cases. But what I'm saying is that we as men, we need to get past expecting a human being to pacify us, but even telling the truth all the time. We cannot control what anybody else does. Yeah. But what we can do is control our response. And if we can get past, if we can become lie-proof and just feel comforted in knowing that we are presenting our best self, I think that's where your victory will come. Yeah. I mean, there are things, for example, that I didn't always agree with in terms of even how the children, after we separated, this is something we didn't mention, but you would realize that your ex-spouse now has a different value system in terms of how the children should be raised. So you will find things like, you might have a spouse that now decides sleepovers are okay, and you're against sleepovers. You don't want your girl sleeping at nobody's house, right? When you were together, and then all of a sudden you hear about sleepovers are happening. Now what are you going to do? And a lot of men lose it in terms of not managing the emotions properly. And then they end up getting in confrontations, and sometimes you get court getting involved and police getting involved and all that.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I feel like a lot of men just fall down in that area when it comes to the court setting, you know. You also say, you know?
I'm glad you went there, because from when we separated, we agreed among ourselves how we will split up the custody of the children. She agreed because I had the more stable environment with the household that I would have primary custody and she would get visitations. Because where she was staying wasn't conducive for the children, what I did, when she came over for her visitation, I would leave the house. I let her visit at my house. When she came over, I would leave my house and let her stay there with the children for the time that she had the visitation. When it was over, I would come back. We did that for a couple months, close to a year. Now she has the visitation. She stays by her mom with them while she has a visitation. But from the time we made that agreement, what I did, I went to court. I went to court and got that agreement to get a judgment on it from a judge that this is really what we agreed to, so you can't change your mind.
But a lot of men don't like court. A lot of men, I find
but
a lot
it's important.
Men, and that's a lot of men. There's go based on how to feel or how to think, and
I went to court
and they don't read.
They
don't understand.
My wife often tells me, "You can't be court." I did, because it was important for me to get that judgment on how we can settle the arrangement with these children. I don't want instability for my children. I don't want you change your mind and say, "I want a little bit more time." No. Let's have a judge decide that this was our agreement and this is what it's going to be. So I took her to court and I got that judgment.
Okay.
Well, I'll tell you each his own, but I'll tell you something, right? Personally, I hate the court.
Yeah.
I am diametrically opposed to and I will say this straight. I'm diametrically opposed to anyone that's sitting on a bench making decisions for me in terms of my children. There's no judge in any court, in any world, any part of the world that could want more or could ask more of me than I'm willing to give on my own for my children. That's the first thing. That's me. Now, I remember when I was first going through this whole divorce proceedings, I went into the room with the lawyers and I told them straight, I am not a child father. I was never a child father. I will never be a child father. My children are as important as my heart, kidneys, and lungs. There's nothing that y'all could ask of me that I wouldn't give even more. So don't come to me with any child father arrangement. As far as custody is concerned, there was never no majority custody. It was always equal and liberal access to both sides. So if the children want to come live with me for 6 months, they can do that. If they want to stay with her for 6 months, they can do that. So I guess we were blessed, or I was blessed in that regard, because I can't tell anybody that I had. It was quite simple. I didn't feel any hatred towards my wife at the time. I made it, I did not let it be about my ego and trying to satisfy me. Central in my mind, and I want to say this clearly, central in my mind from then till now is one person, set of people, and one set of people only. My children. I'm totally irrelevant.
But you know, I hear to you guys, and I got to commend one. But you know, I got some men out there that ain't dealing with breakups, ain't dealing with this co-parenting situation.
It's all in the head. It's all in the head. You see, that's why you see good friends. And
especially if the man got another woman. Especially if the other guy, if the man, or if the woman got a man. The parent don't want the child because the other parent got another partner. I mean, there's so much chaos, and I find like we have a lot going on in society, within our communities, families breaking down. And I mean, they're not saying that two people got to stay together, but we got to accept and understand that who is being hurt in this process are those children. I don't think people getting that. I do not think people are getting it, because it is more about self. We are being a selfish bunch in this society.
Well, let's be honest though, Fabian. Yes, I agree that, first of all, we admit that this is very complicated. Yeah. But in terms of, let's say you're divorced and your ex-wife now has a man. Sometimes a woman having a man is not as simple as a woman having a man. Sometimes you as a man, you have your children in an environment and the man actually has is questionable.
But the woman that you got may be questionable too.
Precisely, but as a man, you tend to assume more dominance as a man than a woman with a man who is questionable. In other words, let me put it this way, right? If I had a woman that was questionable, my children will have less to worry about with a woman that I have that is questionable than the other way around.
Listen to me, right? I didn't want to go here, but
as we wrap up,
the spirit leading me here. My situation is that she has a man, and there was some confrontation between the man and I can be very honest.
Without going into detail.
Right, not a physical confrontation, not physical at all, because I'm going there, I'm lowering myself on nobody.
In a court of law.
But he wanted to instigate something, a confrontation, and I wasn't having it. So when my children aren't with me, the good thing for me is my children sleep by me every night. This is 2.5 years that my children sleep with me when I tell you every night. So I don't have to think about, I wonder what he doing with my children when the boy, you understand? And her visitation is only 3 hours. Tuesdays for 3 hours, Thursday for 3 hours. So that's a very short window. So my children ain't away from my presence for a real long time.
But a lot of men have got that luxury.
So that's why I say I can understand the scenario that you're drawing. I don't know how I would navigate a situation like that, because that is difficult.
And picture you having girl children.
And that's extra difficult.
I mean, boy children are at risk too, but picture having girl children. So you see, this thing is
hard, it's difficult.
Complicated.
It is.
And Phoebe, I know you're a social worker, but we cannot sit down and try to simplify this on paper. This is extremely complex. It's like a pot of soup.
Yeah. I think men have to have resources available to them, places that they can turn to for guidance.
Yeah.
Luckily for me, I had a mother that is a counselor, a mother that is grounded biblically. So she was able to provide the example for me.
You're
but a lot of
blessed.
people don't have that.
You're blessed.
So that's why I decided, agree to come and do this show, because what I'm going through ain't unique to me. A lot of men going through similar things, and men need to hear how we dealing with it, how you went through it, Cornelius, how I going through it, so that the positive things that they're hearing that they think they can pattern, they will pattern.
Yeah.
And I think men in this society need a lot of emotional intelligence. That is something we don't teach men, but that's very needed.
But you need to start from boys. You know, I say boys to men. You need to start from boys.
Yeah, it's true. But Cornelius, as we close, what's the advice you would get to the men out there that are going through this issue with co-parenting and separation?
Well, first of all, I would want to say that they're men and they're men. Now, if you know, for example, as a man, you're not coping, seek help. You know, you're not an island by yourself. Now, I have a certain amount of knowledge about quite a few things. And when I got hit with divorce and the breakup of my family, I did not take any chances. I didn't just get one counselor. I got two. So I would want to advise you to go and get some help. Give somebody like my man here, Fabian Sargent, a call. Fabian, you have a lot of resources around him that will help you. He's well known. He's out there on social media. He's out there in the social work arena. Do that. But the point of the matter is that you are not doing yourself any favors by allowing your emotions, your ego to get away with you and making some really bad decisions and making it worse for yourself and your children. So you get help. That's the word I want to leave.
Yeah.
Get help.
Thank you. Any closing words? So you know you've had a lot to suggest, though.
Yeah. Well, I just want to encourage those fathers that are going through it right now. Rest assured, things will get better. It will not stay this bad. Your feelings will change. Feelings always change. So you may feel like it's hard now. You may feel like you can't get this done. Just know that you can. Trust and know that you can. If you need to talk, call me a man every reason. Call me a every reason. Call Fabian. But just know it's never an option to give up. Giving up is never an option. You might think about it because I think about it. And I say I think about it often because I'm dealing with a whole lot. But giving up is never an option. Things will get better. And just know that your children are looking at every move you make. So have that in front of your brain at all times. Know that your children are looking and you must provide them with a good example at all times.
Yeah, Akil, thank you for being as vulnerable as you were. You shared deeply. You shared a lot. And
I hope it helps someone.
Yeah, can take away from this. Cornelius, thank you as well for being vulnerable. I think this conversation is very touchy, but it must be had, you know.
Yeah,
as I said, this is a space where we speak about those unspoken realities of manhood. We may go through a lot, and I don't think people understand, you know. So thank you guys, and thank you for tuning in to this episode of Men Levy Reason. You can find us on all social media platforms: YouTube, Spotify, Instagram, Facebook. We are there. Like, share, and comment. Until next time, Men Levy Reason.